So exactly 1 year ago today, I packed my bag and left for Calgary to start my journey on the Great Divide Trail. There was a lot of unknowns, but I ended up pretty happy with my gear selection, so I thought I would share it with you guys. So anyway, I'm going to go through my gear. Hopefully it helps somebody out, and yeah, let's get into it. First, I'm going to start with what I wore. I wore 5-inch UnderArmour running shorts, Old Navy GoDry white shirt. This is actually the exact setup I wore for pretty much the whole time. I had to switch out my shorts about halfway through because I wore through like the waistband on them. But that was my fault because I thought it would be a good idea to cut out the liner, but I realized that the liner is awesome because then you don't have to wear underwear. I wore darn tough socks. You can see I gotta send these ones back. They got some pretty big holes in them. So I wore those most of the time. I wore the Xero shoes, Terra trail runners. I wore homemade gaiters. These are actually the ultra trail running gaiters, but because I lost the ones I made homemade, but they worked pretty well. I made them out of a buff. I was also wearing a buff, like the good old neck tube or whatever you want to call it. Wore a Tilly hat the whole time. I think this is the Airflow or the Airflow 2 or something. I also went through like 3 pairs of sunglasses because I kept losing them. Yeah, also I had trekking poles. These are just from Costco in Canada here. They're Cascade Mountain Tech carbon fiber poles, cork handles, and as you can see I ripped the straps out completely. I don't use the straps. But also I got some white medical tape and Gorilla tape on each pole because I tend to like the Gorilla tape better than duct tape actually. It seems to hold just a little better. Anyways, let's get into the pack here. So this is the Zpacks Arc Blast 55. Start off with the front pouch here. I always keep the Thermarest Z seat handy for brakes. That's just a butt pad. It's nice to, if it's raining especially, to have somewhere dry to sit when you take a break. Next, pulling out my headlamp. I always kept that handy because half the time I would be hiking near dark. But it's just a cheap Amazon brand, but it worked really well for me. And I replaced the strap with just some grow grain webbing and a small amount of shot cord. And it's way lighter than any stock strap, so I actually do that with all my headlamps now. Next up, got my towel. This is the towel I used for the whole trail. It's just a little piece of one of those microfiber travel towels. And I just use that for drying off after going for a swim at the end of the day. Next, got my camp shoes, which is just a dollar store shoe insole, and then you tie it up properly into a type of sandal. I forget what it's called. Next up in the front here is my tent, and it's the Durstons XMid 1P, 1-person tent. And I was keeping it down here. There used to be ropes here, but actually halfway through the trail, one of these poles here ripped away and I couldn't use it like that anymore. And so I just stopped using that altogether, even though I did send it back to Zpacks and they fixed it all up for me. But next thing that was in here is 50 meters of 1.8 millimeter dyneema line with some ultralight carabiners on there. Next, always kept my first aid pack handy, or first aid kit. Also had my toothbrush, toothpaste. Let's see, it's full of band-aids, Advil, alcohol prep pads, polysporin, got some Benadryl. I actually carried nail clippers on me to keep my nails trimmed. I carried little scissors and athletic tape, like strips of athletic tape, so I could cut out kind of makeshift band-aids however sized I wanted. That actually worked out really good. Also have moleskin in there, a needle and floss for taking care of blisters, and yeah, pretty much everything you need. I also have steri strips, which are like basically like butterfly stitches or whatever. The other thing that I carry on the outside of my bag is the Toaks poncho. You can see this thing got pretty beat up on the trip. I don't use that one anymore because it's full of holes, but I didn't start out with that. I hiked with my sister on the trail for a week and she brought it and she loved it so much she insisted I take it, which I didn't regret at all. Now I always carry a poncho. I've kind of given up on rain gear being waterproof. It's just a myth. I carried 2 1-liter smart water bottles, and on one of them I had this fancy tube. It's called the Smart Tube, and that just allowed me to drink water without having to awkwardly try and reach behind my back. Always with the water, got the Sawyer Squeeze and the Canuck 2-liter Vecto squeeze bag. And I like that system a lot. It was really fast. You could carry 2 liters of extra water with you if you needed to, if you were going to dry camp somewhere, which I think I only dry camped like twice, but it was nice to have the option. And that's about it. So on the hip belt, I have 2 hip belt pockets. One is the Gossamer Gear hip belt. The other one is the Zpacks. And in them, I always kept my Garmin Mini, just to send a message home saying I was good, got to camp for the day, or just be able to send an SOS if I needed to. And the other one, I filled them both with snacks, but I always had that in one of them. And then also on my bag, I have these 2 custom pouches, shoulder pouches. They're made out of cheap buffs I got off Amazon. Same material I made the gaiters with actually. But this one I had bear spray in the whole time. It never left my shoulder pretty much. And this one I just used for anything, headphones, the Garmin if I was using it, or snack wrappers once I was done eating, just anything I wanted to keep handy. And it actually broke. Oh, there it goes. It just broke on a trip I was on recently. So I'll have to reattach that, but not a big deal there. Time to get into the pack. Alright, so first thing, always keep a rain jacket and my rain pants handy. And this is an UnderArmour rain jacket. I forget the brand on that, I've had that for years. You can see it's covered in tenacious tape. These are Mountain Warehouse pack rain pants. They're just really thin, lightweight rain pants. Both relatively cheap. Next, I just have a couple, I think a 15 and a 7-liter dry bag. Just in case I need to put anything wet into my bag, or if I want to put anything on the outside of my bag to keep dry. Although those became pretty much pointless once I had the poncho, because it just keeps you and your bag dry. And next up, I had my Mountain Warehouse cheap $10 fleece sweater, and it was really nice. I learned on the Great Divide that I'm a lot more sensitive to cold than most people. Every time I got to camp I was layering up and everybody else seemed to just be lounging, but oh well. Next, I carried an emergency mylar blanket for most of the time, actually for the whole time. I didn't really use it. I used it a couple times as a ground sheet when the inside of my tent was still wet, it didn't have a chance to dry out. I would put it down on the inside of my tent. Other than that, I felt like it was good to have because my sleep system was a little questionable, especially for how cold of a sleeper I was. Next up, just have a little one-person tarp. Not very big. That's it in half. Just enough for 1 or 2 people to eat under. And I just got 5 to 10 feet of 1.8 millimeter dyneema line on 4 of the corners. Didn't use it a whole lot, only a handful of times. Next up, just an extra pack liner, and these are odor-proof bags off Amazon that I can't seem to find anymore. But I really liked them. I used them for food bags and pack liners because they're really durable, like way more durable than a garbage bag, and like not as heavy as a contractor bag still though. So that's an extra one. I would throw my tent in there if it was wet, or if I needed to throw it in there, or if my food bag was wet and I needed to throw it in my bag and I didn't want it getting all my other stuff wet, I'd throw it in there. Just things like that. If the tarp was wet, I'd throw it in there. Alright, so the next thing, got my food bag. This is the sack. I don't really know how you pronounce it, but it's a bear-proof bag. And then in it, I would keep, like I said, my food in one of these odor-proof bags. And got my bamboo spoon, which is ToGo. I just found this randomly at a store. It's not really for backpacking, but it works for me. I got the Toaks 750 millimeter pot, and I went with the 750 because I don't, even if I do bring the like mountain house meals or dehydrated meals, I just cook them right in here. And like I always take them out of their prepackaged bags and put them in Ziplocs because you can save a lot of room and weight that way. And then I just cook them in there, like boil water, pour it in, let it stir it around, let it soak. And it works just as good. And then here's my stove, just keeping the Uncle Ben's head net bag. Nice bright orange bag, so it's easy to find because it's so small. But I'm sure most of you know about this stove by now. The BRS, is it 3000 or something? Titanium stove off Amazon. No problems there, been using that for like 2 years. Let's get further. Next up, got the Thermarest neoair xlite. That's the regular men's. I actually did pop that on about the 7th day. It's been good. I just threw some Gorilla Tape on it. I didn't bring the patch kit with me because I figured Gorilla Tape was good enough, and it was. It lasted the rest of the trip. Since then, I've patched it with the patches that come with it, and it's been totally fine. So, and I did start using a ground sheet for a week, and then I got tired of carrying it and using it, and I just said screw it. So, I mean, I think instead of a ground sheet, it's pretty reasonable that you can just inspect your site better than I did, because when I popped it, I was on a massive rock. Like, if I had just looked, I could have seen that I was sleeping on like an arrowhead, basically. See if I can get the last thing on here. Okay. So, that is the last thing in the bag. It is now totally empty. So usually sitting on top of this, I put my tent pegs. And these are just cheap Amazon 6-inch aluminum pegs. They're pretty much the same weight as any ultralight titanium peg. think the lightest titanium pegs I've seen are 6 grams, and these weigh in at 7 grams each. So you can buy these for 25 bucks and get 15 of them, or you can save that 1 gram per peg and pay like 25 bucks for 6 for titanium ones. So I just went with these, especially because I ended up losing a couple of them. So, and they work just fine. And the last pack liner, I've got merino wool, base layer long sleeve, merino wool base layer long johns or pants, bottoms, whatever you want to call them. I've got just socks, little ankle socks to sleep in at night, extra pair of underwear. I've got, this is a down hood for sleeping at night, because my sleeping bag is kind of more of a quilt style, so it ends right at your neck. So on the cold nights, this definitely came in handy. And I'll just say now, all of my down stuff is the same brand. That brand there, it's Aegis Max or something. Another cheap Amazon brand. But it works really well. The only downside is it does lose a little bit of down, but it's not a major issue. I think most down products end up losing down anyway, so. I had the hood. I actually started carrying down pants by them because, as I said, I found I was just getting really cold at night. Before I had the down pants, I bought some cheap sweatpants from a thrift store in the first town I was at, but I wanted something a little more permanent, and can't go wrong with the whole down suit. I had down boots for sleeping at night. I have a down sleeping bag, the Aegis Max one. I think Darwin on the Trail is the one who put me on this one. He recommended it for budget ultralight. And it works really good. It says it's rated to like 0 degrees Celsius, but I'd say it's more like 10. Because the nights where I was getting cold, it was like 0 to 5 degrees. If it went under 0, I was like freezing. Until I got the down pants. Those were a game changer. Most nights I would wear those, I would be too warm. But I would rather that. It would be, if I was too cold, I wouldn't get a good night's sleep, and then the mornings would just be terrible. So. I also have the down jacket, and this one is actually a different brand. It's Paradox. That's a Costco brand. Also all my merino wool base layer stuff is all from Costco. There's the other booty. The other thing I had on me always was another pair of down tufts, and I would just cycle these each day, wash one, or if it was wet, I would still wash them because they get so muddy. Then I would leave those on the outside of my pack to dry, and then every day just keep cycling. And lastly, carried a Anchor power bar, and this is actually one of 3 that I carried because I only planned for 2 0 days in town, so I actually was sending myself these fully charged in my resupply boxes, so that way I could just stop in town quick, keep going, wouldn't have to stay the night and spend excessive money. But I ended up slowing down and staying in town more than I planned, so I ended up sending them all home, except for this one is 13,000 mAh. The one I ended up keeping for the majority of the trip was 10,000 mAh, or milliamp hours, so a little smaller than this one, but it still did just fine for 5 to 7 day carries. And then I got this one sent to me, which is 28,000 milliamp hours. This thing can charge your phone from 0 to 100 like 15 times. And I ended up just carrying this one for the last section because I knew it was about 8 to 9 days, and I knew it was going to be too long for just my smaller one. So I switched this at the last option at Mount Robson, and because my sister left then, I got her to take my other one home. So I had no worries on power then. So I was using an iPhone 7 Plus and Guthooks app as my main map. That is one thing I don't have anymore. Is I did carry the paper maps, the Great Divide Trail Atlas, keeping them in a Ziploc bag, and every time I finished one and I was able to have a fire, that was the most gratifying thing, is to throw that thing in the fire, and you just know that that part's done for good. And the last thing that was in here, besides these, I always kept the chargers in there, wrapped up in all my down gear just to keep them nice and padded. I carried this Anchor wall charger. It's got 2 ports on it, so I could charge my phone and a charger at the same time, or my phone and the Garmin. And then I just carried, not this cord, but obviously charging cords for the Garmin. The Garmin actually uses the same cords as the Anchor, so I had one micro USB cord and then one lightning cord for my iPhone. That about covers it. The only other thing really is I did go through 2 pairs of shoes. One other thing I did carry was an empty mountain house meal package, and I just used that as a pot cozy to go around my Toaks pot. So once I poured my food in there and it was soaking, I would just put the mountain house meal bag over top like this, just to keep the steam and everything in and just keep it hotter. But I carried it for the whole trip, but since then I haven't bought any of those meals, and I threw that out, and I found that you don't really need it. Like, your food stays hot enough. Yeah, hopefully you guys found that helpful. I know I definitely would have liked to see more gear lists for it when I went, because I'm from London, Ontario, and I have never hiked down west, and I really didn't know what to expect. It suited me really well actually, and I think once I got the down pants, I was pretty much set. The poncho as well is a game changer. I kept getting wetted out in my rain gear. I'm just editing the gear video, and I forgot about gloves. I did bring a pair of really lightweight gloves. These ones are Combi brand. We're handy for hiking whenever it got cold, mainly in the mornings I found, or late into the evening, but they did come in handy, and I would definitely recommend bringing some sort of lightweight glove or something to keep your hands warm when it gets cold. Currently I've actually already made them, I just had the seam seal them. I'm making dyneema rain mittens, because I think they would be better than those, because mainly my hands got cold when it was raining and they were wet and the wind was making them cold, so I don't know. But those are what I brought, and they worked good. Hopefully you found that helpful, and thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.